In what seemed like a warm family vacation cruise, I realized just how naive I had been. My parents smiled as they raised their glasses of wine. My younger brother patted me on the shoulder as if congratulating me, and my beautiful wife, whom I trusted with all my heart, stood right beside me. A few seconds later, a cold shove threw me into the dark sea. Their laughter blended with the sound of the waves, and I understood. My family never wanted to go far with me. They just wanted me to disappear. But they were wrong. The sea couldn't swallow me, and this time I will be the one to drown them. My name is Adam Blake. Now I'm 36 years old, sitting here in a small, dimly lit room above an old coffee shop in Miami, where no one recognizes me. I'm writing these lines as a reminder to myself to never forget what happened, but to understand why everything led to that deadly moment at sea. I have to go back in time to the very beginning, the days when I thought fate had abandoned me, but which were actually the foundation for everything that followed. I was born into a middle-class family in a small coastal town in Florida. Not the kind of middle class with mansions and luxury cars, but the type where my parents had to count every penny to pay the bills. My dad worked as a plumber and my mom sold goods at the local supermarket. We lived in an old wooden house where the roof leaked every time it rained heavily, and the fridge was always filled with leftovers from the day before. My childhood wasn't affluent, but it wasn't too bad, at least not until my younger brother, John, was born. John was 5 years younger than me, and from the moment he let out his first cry, everything changed. My parents looked at John like he was a treasure. "He's so smart," my mom would say, even though John was just learning to crawl at the time. And me? I was ordinary Adam. Nothing outstanding, not the top student in class, not an exceptional athlete, just a short kid with messy hair and eyes that often stared into the distance. My parents never said it outright, but I could feel the favoritism in every small gesture. When John got new shoes, I had to wear the worn-out old ones. When John cried from falling, Mom would rush to hug him, but I'd get scolded. "You're big now, get up yourself." They saw me as ordinary with no future. Words my dad once said to my mom one evening when they thought I was asleep. I heard it all, and it hurt like a knife. I grew up with that feeling of abandonment. At school, I tried to study hard, but not to prove anything to my parents, because I knew that if I didn't take care of myself, no one would. I started doing odd jobs from the age of 14, mowing lawns for neighbors, washing cars at the local garage, even secretly selling homemade gummy candies at school. The money I earned, I hid carefully under my bed, dreaming of the day I'd leave this town. John was different. He was pampered, excelled in studies, was great at sports, and my parents always proudly bragged about him to everyone. "My John is going to be a big success," Dad would say. And me? Never mentioned. By the time I was 18, I couldn't take it anymore. One evening, after arguing with Dad because he took my savings to buy a birthday gift for John, I decided to run away from home. I packed a few clothes, some loose change, and an old bicycle, then pedaled straight onto the highway. No goodbye. I remember that night clearly. It was pouring rain, and tears mixed with the rain on my face. "If you're leaving, go and don't come back," Dad yelled after me. Mom just stood there watching, saying nothing. John giggled as if he was winning. I pedaled all night, and by morning I was lost in Miami, the city of dreams and failures. Miami back then was a different world to me. Skyscrapers glittering under the sun, shiny luxury cars zooming by, and the vast blue sea calling invitingly. But reality was harsh. I slept in parks for the first few nights, ate leftover bread from trash bins, and looked for jobs everywhere. I worked as a waiter at fast food joints, washed dishes in restaurants, even swept at the harbor. The work was grueling, the pay low. But I gritted my teeth and endured. I learned to live alone without relying on anyone. Every night, curled up under a bridge, I thought about my family. I called home a few times, but my parents only asked superficial questions before handing the phone to John. They didn't ask what I was eating, where I was staying, or if I was okay. "Adam can take care of himself," Mom said. I accepted it, knowing they weren't well off either. But that pain built up, making me more distant. Our relationship was as fragile as a thread, and I told myself, I don't need them anymore. Then opportunity came. One day, while sweeping at the harbor, I heard that a luxury yacht sales company was hiring salespeople. I had no experience, but I had a way with words and boldness. I put on my cleanest outfit, an old shirt and jeans, and walked into the office. The boss, a middle-aged guy named Terry, looked me up and down. "What do you know about yachts?" he asked. I shook my head. "Nothing at all, sir. But I know how to convince people to buy things they don't need." Terry laughed heartily, and just like that, I got the job, at the lowest starting salary. Selling yachts in Miami wasn't easy. Those boats cost tens of millions of dollars, meant for the ultra-rich, entrepreneurs, Hollywood stars, even Russian mafia. I had to learn fast, how to speak politely, how to boast about the engines, real leather interiors, and the ocean views from the deck. In the early days, customers looked down on me terribly. A billionaire in an Armani suit once looked at me like I was a cockroach. "You? Selling a yacht to me? You don't even know how to hold a wine glass properly." I swallowed my pride, smiled it off, and kept going. But there were also life-changing moments. One scorching afternoon, I attended to a client named Mr. Harlan, a wealthy old man from Texas with a silver beard and sharp eyes. He inspected a $15 million yacht but didn't rush to buy. Instead, he sat down on the deck, offered me a cigar, and asked about my life. I told him everything. My poor childhood, running away from home, odd jobs. Mr. Harlan listened, then said, "Son, selling yachts is good, but don't just sell. Invest. These rich guys don't buy boats for fun, they buy to make money. Learn how they do it." He advised me to read books on investing, starting with coastal real estate stocks. That was the most touching detail. A stranger saw potential in me, while my own flesh and blood family did not. That advice was like a ray of light piercing through the fog in my mind. I clearly remember that afternoon on the deck, with cigar smoke drifting lazily and the Miami sea sparkling under the sun. Mr. Harlan patted me on the shoulder before leaving, handing me the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad that he pulled from his vest pocket. "Read it, young man, and remember, money isn't the goal, it's the tool." I held the book, my heart swelling with a strange emotion. Gratitude. Gratitude because someone believed in me, even if it was just an old man I met by chance. And my family? They were still in that small town with sparse phone calls full of half-hearted responses and questions about John. I no longer blamed them, or at least tried not to. I had my own life to build. From that day on, everything changed. I still sold yachts, but now every conversation with a client wasn't just to close the deal. It was also a lesson. I listened to them, the oil billionaires, the tech moguls from Silicon Valley, the movie stars with their fake smiles. They talked about the real estate market, how to turn a piece of coastal land into a golden resort, or how to rent out yachts for profit without ever sailing them yourself. I jotted it all down in a small notebook, its pages crumpled from sweat and sea salt. My persuasive skills, honed from those early days of odd jobs in Miami, began to shine. I didn't just sell boats, I sold dreams. Imagine this, sir. This yacht isn't just a vehicle, it's an asset. Rent it out and money will flow into your pocket every month. Clients liked that kind of talk. They saw in me not an ordinary salesman, but someone who understood. In just the first year after Mr. Harlan's advice, I became the company's sales star. I sold 3 luxury yachts, each priced from $10 to $20 million. Commissions poured in like rain. 5%, 10%, sometimes more for big deals. The first time I held a 6-figure check, my hands trembled. Am I rich now? I wondered, sitting alone in my small rented apartment on the outskirts of Miami. No, not rich yet, but enough to start. I saved every penny, avoiding wasteful spending. No drinking, no partying, just black coffee and sleepless nights reading books. I bought my first stock. a coastal real estate company in Florida, cheap because the market was stagnant. I researched thoroughly, reading financial reports, following tourism news. My heart raced like I was gambling, but it wasn't blind gambling, it was calculated. Then relationships started forming. Those wealthy clients didn't just buy yachts, they invited me into their circles. A guy named Victor, owner of a hotel chain, had bought a $15 million yacht from me. After the deal, he patted my shoulder. "Adam, you're smart. Want to invest? I've got a real estate project in Key West, beachfront land, building condos for rent." I hesitated. My capital at the time was a mere $150,000 from accumulated commissions. "Just a small stake," Victor laughed. 5% shares, enough for you to learn." I agreed, my heart pounding. That was my first step into the real world of investing. The project succeeded. The condos sold out in 6 months, doubling the profit. I withdrew my capital plus interest and immediately reinvested in a yacht rental company that Victor introduced. "Renting boats for tourism, safe, steady returns," he said. I invested $200,000 and every quarter rental money flowed into my account. But it wasn't always smooth. There were nights I lost sleep from worry. The market fluctuated. The 2008 storm nearly collapsed everything. Real estate stocks plummeted. I remember clearly sitting in the company office staring at the red charts on my old computer screen. Have I lost it all? That fear was like the day I ran away from home at 18. Lonely, desperate. But I didn't give up. I worked tirelessly, waking at 5 a.m., jogging along the beach to clear my head, then diving into the office. I learned to read contracts, those thick pages of fine print full of legal traps. I self-taught through books and YouTube. How to calculate finances, return on investment, risks. Analyzing the market, tracking oil prices' impact on tourism, forecasting weather for hurricane season. Each new deal was a battle. Once I convinced a Russian real estate tycoon to buy a $30 million yacht. He was tough, demanding discounts. I negotiated for 3 days, sweating under the Miami sun. "Sir, this price is an investment. This yacht will rent out for double the purchase price in 5 years." In the end, he signed, and that commission was enough for me to buy my first apartment. Relationships with clients grew tighter. They weren't just customers, they were mentors. A woman named Elena, a businesswoman from New York, invited me to invest in a luxury yacht rental company project. "Adam, you have an eye for it. Put in a few $100,000. I guarantee profits." I borrowed more from the bank, taking the risk. The project exploded. Yachts rented for high society parties, money pouring in like water. I learned from them how to build networks, how to negotiate without mercy. But mixed with the joy was loneliness. I called home to tell my parents I just had a successful investment, big profits. Dad just grunted. "Good. Our John just bought a new car." John asked, "Can you lend me some, bro?" "I'm starting a business." I sent the money, but my heart ached. They didn't care about my journey, only the results. Gradually, I realized I couldn't stay an employee forever. After 4 years with over $1.5 million accumulated from commissions and investments, I decided to quit. Terry, my old boss, shook his head. "Are you crazy? It's a stable job." But I knew, stability is the enemy of success. I founded my own investment company, Blake Investments. Starting small, yacht rentals. I bought my first boat with savings, refurbished it, then rented it out for tourism. Old clients referred, wedding parties, corporate events. Rental income came steadily, enough to expand. Then yacht brokerage. I acted as a middleman, earning commissions without needing large capital. Each successful deal was a step forward. I rented a small office in downtown Miami with an ocean view from the window. In the early nights, I slept right at my desk, papers scattered everywhere. After that, I expanded into vacation real estate. I bought my first plot in Fort Lauderdale beachfront, a bargain because the previous owner went bankrupt. Built a small resort, Suite rooms, swimming pool, ocean view. I designed it myself, learning from books and friends. That first project was nerve-wracking. Banks refused loans because I was new money. I sold all my stocks, borrowed from friends, even mortgaged my apartment. Construction took a year, noisy machinery, dust, and nights worrying about the weather. But when the resort opened, guests flooded in, the wealthy from everywhere. Profits multiplied. I reinvested, bought more land, built more. The company grew, from one person to a team of 20 employees. I learned management, hiring, delegating, even firing when necessary. Each decision was a gamble, my heart racing like a drum. There were moments of near collapse. A real estate project in the Bahamas was devastated by a hurricane, lost $200,000 outright. I sat on the beach, tears streaming down, thinking of the old days. Am I back to zero? But I got up, learned from the mistake, bought better insurance, forecasted risks more carefully, and success followed. By age 30, my assets reached the $100 million mark. I bought a mansion in Miami Beach, a Porsche, but without flaunting. I still wore old shirts, ate hamburgers at roadside diners. My family started noticing. Parents called more often, checking in. Adam, are you rich now? Send some for us, the house is leaking. I sent money, but doubt crept in. Did they love me or my money? At 36, everything peaked. Blake Investments owned a chain of resorts, a fleet of rental yachts, and a portfolio of coastal real estate stretching from Florida to the Caribbean. Estimated net worth, $1.2 billion. The press called me a self-made billionaire from nothing. I appeared in Forbes, interviewed about my journey. But deep down, I was still that abandoned kid. Success doesn't heal. It only exposes people's hearts. My family started coming frequently to borrow money. John was drowning in debt from failed business ventures. Parents wanted a newer, more luxurious house. I still gave, but the relationship grew increasingly tense. And then Lydia appeared, the woman who changed everything. I met Lydia at a charity gala in Miami Beach where the elite gathered to show off and sign checks. At that time, I was 34 years old, and Blake Investments was at its peak with coastal resorts generating profits like a money-printing machine. I stood alone at the bar, holding a glass of scotch, observing the crowd glittering with dresses and Rolex watches. She entered like a sea breeze, her golden blonde hair cascading down, her blue eyes sparkling under the chandeliers, and a smile that lit up the entire room. Lydia Harper, 28 years old, worked for a PR firm specializing in serving the wealthy. She approached me first with a sweet voice. "Mr. Blake, I hear you're the king of coastal real estate. Tell me about your yachts." I smiled for the first time after many exhausting days at work. We talked all evening about the sea, about investments, about dreams. She was intelligent, sharp, and knew how to listen, something I rarely found in the women around me who were only interested in my wallet. From that gala, everything happened quickly. We dated, strolling on the beach at sunset, dining at Michelin-starred restaurants, even flying privately to the Bahamas to relax. Lydia made me feel alive again. She told me about her difficult childhood in New York, her parents' divorce, becoming independent at 18, strangely similar to me. "I understand the feeling of being abandoned," she whispered one evening, lying beside me on the deck of my personal yacht. I believed her. Believed that finally I had found someone who understood me, not because of the money. I told Lydia everything about my family, the favoritism, the years of loneliness. She hugged me, comforting. "You deserve better than that. I'll be your family." My heart melted. After 2 years of getting to know each other, I decided to propose to Lydia on a private beach with a diamond ring sparkling under the moonlight. She cried, nodded. Everyone around, friends, partners, said, "The perfect couple. Adam is finally happy." The wedding was a luxurious dream that I had never dared to imagine in my entire life. We held it at my resort in Key West. Fine white sand beaches, white orchids covering the aisles, and a live orchestra playing our favorite symphony. Over 300 guests, billionaires, celebrities, even the governor of Florida. Lydia wore a Vera Wang wedding dress, looking like a goddess. I stood at the altar, my heart pounding, thinking, finally I have a real family. My parents and John came too, their first time flying business class, paid for by me. Dad patted my shoulder. Son, you've done well. Mom cried, Lydia is so beautiful. John grinned. Bro, now you're the big shot. The party lasted late into the night, champagne flowing like streams, fireworks exploding in the sky. I danced with Lydia, feeling like all the past pain had vanished. But deep down, a strange premonition crept in. My family's smiles were too radiant, too calculated. After the wedding, we lived in a beachfront villa in Miami, the dream house with an infinity pool and a vast ocean view. Lydia quit her PR job, becoming Mrs. Blake, helping me organize events for the company. Married life was sweet at first, morning coffees together, trips to Europe. She was smart, supporting me in business, suggesting ideas for new resorts, even negotiating with partners. I thought I was lucky. But then my family, my parents and younger brother, started calling more frequently. Not to check in, but to borrow money. The first time was Dad. Adam, the old house is too leaky. Lend me some to fix it up, just $50,000. I transferred it right away, thinking it was my duty. Then Mom, son, I have joint pain, need money for treatment. John says you're really rich. I sent more, but John was the big problem. My younger brother, now 31, still aimless, was drowning in debt. He tried businesses, opening a bar in the old town, then investing in stocks, following friends, but all failures. Bro, I've lost everything. Lend me $100,000, I'll pay you back. I lent it the first time, the second. But by the third, I started asking, John, what are you using the money for? He snapped, you're so rich, why be stingy? We're family. Those calls exhausted me. Lydia comforted, you're too good, they don't deserve it. But I still gave because of blood ties, because of hope for reconciliation. Family relationships grew increasingly tense. I invited them to visit the villa a few times, hoping to get closer. Those gatherings were fun at first, seafood dinners, beach walks. My parents marveled. Your house is so beautiful, Adam. John fondled my Porsche. Bro, let me borrow it. But gradually they started hinting about assets. One evening after dinner, Dad sat smoking. Adam, you're so rich, you'll share some with the family later, right? John needs capital for business. Mom chimed in. Yes, you're the eldest. I forced a smile. Mom and Dad, I'll take care of everyone. But my heart was heavy. They didn't see my journey, only the money. Lydia sat beside me, silent, but I noticed she often glanced at John. Ambiguous looks, a blink longer than usual, a discreet smile when John told a joke. The first time I brushed it off. I'm just paranoid. Lydia loves me. But it repeated. Once in the kitchen, I caught them standing close, John whispering something, Lydia giggling. My heart tightened, but I told myself, don't think nonsense. They're brother-in-law and sister-in-law. The tension escalated. John borrowed more and more, $200,000, then $500,000. I'll pay back soon, I have a big project. I refused the first time. John, you have to stand on your own. He got angry. You've changed. Wealth made you forget your roots. My parents called to scold. Adam, you're selfish. John is your blood brother. I gave in, but my heart was full of suspicion. Lydia advised, you should cut them off. They're using you. She said that, but sometimes I saw her calling John, whispering. Just checking in, she explained when I asked. I believed her because of love, blind love. Family gatherings became a hidden hell. That Christmas, I invited everyone to the villa. My parents brought cheap gifts, but their eyes sparkled at the giant Christmas tree and my presents. A watch for Dad, a handbag for Mom, a new car for John. They raised their glasses. Thanks, Adam. But then Dad rambled while drunk. You should make a will soon. Later, if something happens, the assets will prioritize the family. John laughed. Dad's right. You should listen to him. Lydia sat beside me, gripping her wine glass tightly, her eyes gliding over John. A meaningful look. I saw it all, my heart aching. That night, lying next to Lydia, I asked, "Do you have something with John?" She laughed. "Are you crazy? I only love you." I hugged her, trying to dispel the doubts. But sleep was restless. I started monitoring, checking Lydia's phone, but found nothing. I'm too paranoid, I blamed myself. Finally, to mend things, I suggested a family cruise. "We need time together," I told Lydia. She agreed, her eyes sparkling strangely. My parents were excited. "A luxury yacht? Awesome." John smiled. "Fantastic. This will surely be a trip with unforgettable memories." I began planning. My personal yacht, a 5-day journey on the Caribbean Sea. I hoped the trip would heal the cracks in my family. But looking back now, I realized that was the biggest mistake. I had spent an entire month preparing for the trip, meticulously down to every detail, just like how I built my business empire. The yacht Stella Maris, my pride and joy, was a masterpiece, 80 meters long with glossy walnut wood interiors, luxurious bedrooms like a 5-star hotel, and a top-tier deck with a bar overlooking the ocean. I hired a chef from a Michelin-starred restaurant, prepared a menu of fresh seafood and premium wines. The itinerary would pass through the most beautiful islands in the Caribbean, from the vibrant Bahamas to the splendid Turks and Caicos. I envisioned evenings where the whole family sat around the dinner table, laughing, sharing, erasing the tensions over money and those ambiguous glances I tried to brush off. I wanted to believe that this would be the opportunity for us to become a real family, like I had dreamed of when I was that abandoned kid in the old town. On departure day, the sky was clear blue, the sea surface sparkling like silver. I stood on the deck, welcoming my parents and John from the private airport. My parents marveled as they stepped onto the yacht, touching the shiny railings like children seeing new toys for the first time. "Adam, you've really made it big," Dad said, his eyes sparkling. Mom hugged me, but the hug was quick and superficial. John, in a white linen shirt, patted my shoulder. "Bro, this must be worth tens of millions, right?" I smiled, but my heart twinged a bit. John's question wasn't admiration, but like he was calculating. Lydia, in a sea blue maxi dress, stood beside me, holding my hand tightly as if to reassure me. "They'll see how wonderful you are," she whispered. I looked into her eyes, trying to find sincerity, but that sparkle made me uneasy. The first day at sea was perfect, at least on the surface. We had breakfast with lobster and caviar, sipping champagne under the morning sun. Dad told stories of his old days as a plumber. Mom giggled as John joked about our childhood. Lydia, with her social skills, livened up the atmosphere. She recounted the first time we met, praising me as the man who turns dreams into reality. Everyone laughed heartily, raising their glasses. I started to relax, thinking I had worried too much. We sunbathed on the deck, snorkeled to see coral near a small island. John, with his confident demeanor, jumped into the sea first, calling to Lydia, "Sister-in-law, come on down, the water's cool." She laughed, jumped in after him, and the two splashed around playfully. I watched from the deck, seeing them laugh and talk, their hands touching longer than necessary. A cold ripple ran through me, but I told myself, they're just having fun, don't be paranoid. In the evening, the atmosphere was still cheerful, but there was something underlying, like a cold breeze blowing through. We dined under the stars, the table shimmering with candles and flowers. The chef brought out Wagyu steak and grilled lobster, rich red wine from Tuscany. My parents talked about the old town, complaining about being old, nothing interesting anymore. John interjected, "Lucky we have Adam, otherwise our family would still be in that leaky house." That remark, even if joking, made me uncomfortable. Lydia laughed, but her eyes glanced at John, and this time I saw it clearly. A discreet smile, as if they shared a secret. I took a big sip of wine, trying to drown the unease. On the second night, everything started to reveal itself. After dinner, we went up to the upper deck for cocktails and to watch the night sea. I drank more than usual. The strong liquor fogged my mind, but I wanted to forget the suspicions. John, with a whiskey in hand, started talking about the future. "Adam, you're so rich, you'll leave the whole empire to the family, right?" Dad nodded. "Yeah, John needs opportunities. You should think about a will." I forced a smile. "Dad, I'm only 36, why talk about a will?" But Mom chimed in. "You're the eldest, you have to take care of your brother." Lydia was silent, but I saw her gripping her cocktail glass tightly, her eyes staring into the distance. The air was heavy despite the surface smiles. I stood up, a bit unsteady from the alcohol, and walked to the railing to breathe in the sea air. The night sea was pitch black, only the steady sound of waves crashing. John followed, patting my shoulder. "Bro, thanks for this trip, it's really memorable." His voice was sweet, but something felt fake. Lydia stood nearby, looking at me with an inscrutable expression. My parents also approached, raising their glasses as if to toast. I smiled, thinking I was doing the right thing, bringing the family closer. But then, in a moment, everything collapsed. John whispered, his voice low but sharp, "Say hello to the sharks." Before I could comprehend, a strong shove from behind threw me off balance. I tumbled over the railing, falling straight into the inky black sea. The icy water enveloped me, pulling me down like an invisible hand. I flailed, screamed, but the waves drowned out everything. Through the water, I saw their silhouettes on the deck. Lydia, my parents, John, standing there, looking down. No one jumped in to save me, no one shouted an alarm. I faintly heard Dad's voice, cold as stone. "Just pretend he never existed." Lydia smiled, the smile I once thought was just for me, now cold as a knife. John raised his glass as if toasting, his arm around Lydia's shoulder. The salty seawater flooded my mouth. I coughed violently, trying to swim up. But the alcohol and shock made my body heavy as lead. In that moment, the pain wasn't the impending death, but the betrayal. My family, the people I loved, the ones I sacrificed for, had pushed me into the abyss. Lydia, whom I thought was my soulmate, stood there, smiling. My heart shattered, but the will to survive surged. I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let them take everything. The night sea was pitch black, without a single light, only the roaring waves howling as if wanting to swallow me whole. The icy water seeped into my skin, every arm stroke a battle against my own body. I wasn't a strong swimmer. Those days of odd jobs at the harbor hadn't taught me how to survive in the open ocean. The whiskey was still in my bloodstream, making my head spin, my vision blur. The image of them on the deck haunted me. John with his triumphant smile, my parents standing there coldly watching, and Lydia, her smile like a knife slashing into my heart. "Just pretend he never existed," my dad's voice echoed in my head, sharp and cold as ice. I gritted my teeth, tears mixing with the seawater. "No, I won't let you win." I flailed, desperately searching for anything to cling to. My hand touched a floating piece of wood, perhaps debris from some ship or a fragment of a deck broken by waves. I hugged it tightly, my body trembling from cold and exhaustion. The wood was slick and smooth, just enough to keep me afloat on the surface. I gasped for air, coughing up salty water, my heart pounding as if it would explode. "You can't die here, Adam," I told myself, my voice hoarse and strained. I thought about my journey, from the kid who ran away from home, sleeping under bridges, to the owner of a $1.2 billion empire. I had fought my whole life to prove I wasn't ordinary with no future, like my parents had once said. Now the very people I called family wanted to bury me at the bottom of the sea. That pain burned in my chest, but it also fueled me to keep going. Time passed slowly, each second stretching like a century. I didn't know how long I'd been drifting, a few hours or the whole night. The sea was utterly dark, not a star in sight, only the ceaseless crashing of waves. The cold wind cut through my skin, making me shiver uncontrollably. I tried to stay alert, muttering nonsense to myself to avoid dozing off. If I let go, the wood would drift away and I'd sink. I thought about Lydia. Not the Lydia of now, but the Lydia from the early days when she held my hand on the beach promising to be my family. How could I have been so blind? Those ambiguous glances between her and John, those whispered phone calls, all signs, but I had chosen to trust. I blamed myself, but that self-blame quickly turned into anger. "They'll pay for this," I muttered, my voice weak but full of determination. My body was gradually giving out. My arms went numb from clutching the wood. My legs ached from kicking water. I started hallucinating, images of my mom standing on the deck not to save me but to mock me. "Adam, you've always been useless," her voice rang in my head. Then John, raising his whiskey glass high, "Say hello to the sharks." I shook my head violently, trying to dispel those visions. "No, I'm still alive. I'll survive." I thought of Mr. Harlan, the old client who had given me the book and advice that changed my life. "Money is a tool, Adam. Use it to live, not to die." His voice seemed to echo from somewhere, pulling me back from the edge of despair. The sea continued to roar relentlessly, but I began to realize I couldn't just cling and wait. I tried to orient myself, though I had no idea where I was. I recalled those days working at the Miami harbor, listening to sailors talk about currents and sea winds. If I drifted in this direction, maybe I'd get closer to a shipping route, but the chance was slim. I was exhausted, my eyelids heavy. At times, I felt like I was about to let go, letting the sea pull me under. But then, a memory flashed. The day I ran away from home, pedaling my bike in the pouring rain, determined not to turn back. "You did it once, Adam. Do it again," I told myself. Suddenly, a faint light appeared in the distance, small like a spark, but enough to make my heart race. I shouted, my voice hoarse, waving my arms even though I didn't know if anyone could see. The light grew larger, accompanied by the sound of a boat engine, a Coast Guard vessel with its searchlight sweeping across the water. I used my last bit of strength, yelling loudly, "Over here! Help me!" My arms waved wildly, the wood wobbling and nearly slipping from my grasp. The spotlight shone directly on me, blinding me. A voice boomed over the loudspeaker. "Hold on tight! We're coming right now!" I burst into tears, not because I was saved, but because my will to survive had won. They pulled me onto the boat, wrapped me in warm blankets, and gave me water to drink. I shivered, my body aching as if I'd been beaten. A man in a patrol uniform asked, "What's your name?" What happened? My mind was reeling, but I knew I couldn't tell the truth. Not yet. If I revealed I was Adam Blake, they'd notify authorities and my family would know I was alive. No, I needed time. "James Carter," I lied, my voice weak. "I'm a tourist. The boat capsized. I don't remember clearly." They nodded, not suspicious. They took me to a small hospital on the nearest island, checked my health. I refused to report to the police, saying it was just an accident. Deep down, the plan to play dead had formed. They thought I was dead at the bottom of the sea, and I'd use that very misconception to turn the tables. In the days that followed, I lay in the hospital, my body gradually recovering, but my mind not. Every night I dreamed of the moment I fell into the sea. John's laughter, Lydia's cold gaze, my father's words. I would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. But that pain didn't break me. It forged me into someone different, sharper, more determined. I began thinking about the next steps. I would return, but not as the old Adam Blake, the one who blindly trusted family and love. I would be a ghost, silently observing, gathering evidence, and making them pay. I left the hospital on a small island in the Caribbean with a few old sets of clothes and a fake name, James Carter. I couldn't return to Miami right away. It was too dangerous. If anyone recognized me, the plan would fall apart. I contacted Lucas, an old friend from my days doing odd jobs at the Miami harbor. Lucas was now the owner of a small coffee shop in the suburbs, living quietly with no ties to the upper class. Over the phone, his voice choked up. "Adam, you're alive." "Damn, what happened?" I told him briefly, just enough for him to understand I needed help and that he had to keep it absolutely secret. Don't tell anyone, not even your closest friend, I warned. Lucas agreed immediately without asking more. You know where I am. Just come. I took a cheap ferry back to Miami, wearing a baseball cap pulled low and an old worn-out jacket. No one noticed me. An ordinary guy, not the billionaire Adam Blake on the cover of Forbes. When I arrived at Lucas's coffee shop, it was already dark. The shop was small, tucked away in an alley with flickering neon lights and the fragrant smell of roasted coffee. Lucas hugged me tightly, his eyes red. You look like a ghost, Adam. I smiled faintly, looking at myself in the wall mirror. Gaunt, with scruffy beard, eyes full of fiery anger. Good. Ghosts are harder to spot. Lucas led me up to the small room above the coffee shop, which he had once used as storage. A single bed, an old wooden table, and a window overlooking a dark alley. Stay here as long as you want. No one will know, Lucas said. I nodded, feeling safe for the first time in days. I changed my appearance that very night. Shaved clean, cut my hair short, dyed it black so no one would recognize me. I wore ripped jeans and faded t-shirts, no longer Adam Blake in an Armani suit. In the mirror, I saw a stranger, but the eyes were still mine, determined and unforgiving. In those early days in the room, I lived like a ghost. I avoided going out during the day, only leaving at night to buy food from the nearby convenience store. Lucas brought me an old phone and a beat-up laptop, enough to follow the news. The media was buzzing. Billionaire Adam Blake missing at sea after fateful yacht trip. Images of Lydia appeared everywhere. She was sobbing in front of the cameras, hair disheveled, voice choked. Adam was everything to me. I don't know how I'll go on. I gritted my teeth, clenching the phone tightly. Hypocrite. My parents were also in the papers, hugging each other at a memorial service, eyes red. John bowed his head, telling reporters, "My brother was an amazing person. We'll never forget him." I wanted to smash the screen. They acted better than Hollywood stars, but I knew the truth. They were waiting for confirmation of my death to divide up the assets. I began planning, but I knew I couldn't act impulsively. I had no concrete evidence, only memories of John's shove, Lydia's gaze, and my father's words. If I appeared now, they'd deny everything and I'd lose my advantage. I needed proof. I needed time. I lay on the hard bed, staring at the stained ceiling, thinking about my empire. Blake Investments, the resorts, the yacht fleet. It was all in my hands, but if they thought I was dead, they'd try to seize it. I couldn't let that happen. I started observing from afar. Lucas lent me an old motorcycle and I sneaked near my villa at night. From a distance through the fence, I saw the lights blazing brightly. Lydia was still there, living like a queen. I saw her on the balcony holding a glass of wine, talking on the phone. Her smile, the one that once melted me, now only made me want to scream. I also discovered John visiting the villa more frequently. One night, I saw him step out of his car, hugging Lydia in a way that was too intimate. My heart tightened, but I forced myself to stay calm. Evidence, Adam. You need evidence. I began contacting people I trusted. Jacob Barnett, my loyal associate at Blake Investments, was the first I called. I used a prepaid phone, calling from a hidden corner in the coffee shop. "Jacob, it's me, Adam," I whispered. On the other end, Jacob's voice trembled. "Adam? Oh God, you're alive?" I told him briefly, asking him to keep it secret and check the company's situation. Jacob reported that Lydia and John were trying to access the trust fund, my largest asset, locked tight with legal clauses. "They're pressuring the lawyers, saying you're dead," Jacob said. "But don't worry, I'll block them." I thanked Jacob, my heart lightening a bit. There were people on my side. I also contacted Miguel, the longtime butler at the villa, and Rosa, the loyal housekeeper. Both were shocked to learn I was alive, but they promised to help. "Mr. Blake, we don't trust Mrs. Lydia," Rosa whispered over the phone. "She's changed since you went missing. It's like she's waiting for something." I asked them to watch Lydia's every move, record anything unusual. They both agreed. I knew I was stepping into a dangerous game, but I had no other choice. With the help of Jacob, Miguel, and Rosa, I began my investigation journey, a silent war in the shadows. Each passing day, I understood more clearly the conspiracy that had pushed me into the sea. But I needed concrete evidence, not just to satisfy my anger, but to bring them to justice. Jacob was the first key. He wasn't just an associate, he was also the manager of my trust fund, the $1.2 billion asset protected by a series of complex legal contracts. Through secret calls, Jacob reported that Lydia had hired a team of lawyers to declare me legally missing, the first step for her and the family to access the assets. "They're forging documents, Adam," Jacob said, his voice tense. "Lydia claims she's the primary heir and John is supporting her." I asked Jacob to lock down all accounts, transfer the trust fund to a safer structure that only he and I could access. "Don't let them touch a single penny," I said. Jacob agreed, and we planned a trap, creating fake documents, inheritance papers that seemed legitimate but were full of legal flaws to lure Lydia and the family into signing. If they signed, it would be proof of their attempt to unlawfully seize the assets. Meanwhile, Miguel and Rosa became my eyes and ears inside the villa. I sent them a set of small hidden cameras bought from an old electronics store with cash to avoid any trace. Miguel, with his skills as a former electrician, secretly installed the cameras in discreet places: the living room, Lydia's office, even the hallway leading to the master bedroom. Rosa, with the subtlety of a longtime housekeeper, noticed every detail. Lydia frequently met John at night when she thought no one was watching. "They often talk in the library with the door closed," Rosa reported via encrypted messages. "I overheard bits about the plan and the assets." I gritted my teeth, my heart racing. Each piece of information was a stab, but also a brick building my case for justice. One night, I sneaked near the villa, parking the motorcycle in an alley a few blocks away. I wore a hood, dark glasses, and observed from afar. Through the app on my phone, I could view the footage from the hidden cameras. Lydia and John were in the library under dim lighting. John held a stack of papers, his voice gleeful. "Once the lawyers confirm, everything will be ours." Lydia laughed, leaning on his shoulder. "He trusted me too much, John. Everything was too easy." I clenched the phone tightly, nearly cracking the screen. They hadn't just betrayed me. They had planned it for a long time. I asked Rosa to steal some documents from Lydia's desk. She did it skillfully, taking advantage of when Lydia was at the spa. Rosa sent me photos, forged contracts where Lydia declared herself the sole heir, with my father's signature as a witness. I forwarded these photos to Jacob, asking him to coordinate with a trusted lawyer for analysis. "This is clear evidence of intent to defraud," the lawyer confirmed. But I needed more. I needed to prove they had tried to kill me. I started digging deeper. Through an old contact from my harbor working days, I hired a private investigator, a guy named Carlos who specialized in uncovering the secrets of the wealthy. I paid in cash, leaving no trace. Carlos discovered that John had connections to a criminal underworld group in Miami, the ones who lent him money to pay off gambling debts. "They don't just lend," Carlos reported. "They also provide people for dirty jobs." I felt a chill, realizing the shove on the yacht wasn't impulsive. It was planned. I asked Carlos to find evidence of transactions between John and this group. After a few weeks, he sent me copies of messages, John promising to pay off his debt with a portion of my brother's assets after the job is done. I trembled with rage, but also felt a spark of hope. This was the evidence I needed. In the meantime, I continued living in anonymity. Every day I read the newspapers, tracking every move of the family. Lydia hosted lavish parties in the villa as if celebrating. My parents appeared on TV talking about the pain of losing a son with crocodile tears. John was busy meeting lawyers, trying to unlock the trust fund. I knew time was running out. They would soon realize the assets weren't easy to seize. I needed to act fast. Jacob and I prepared the final step of the trap. We created a fake document stating that the trust fund would be unlocked if all family members signed an asset division agreement. Jacob sent this document through the lawyers, pretending it was the final legal requirement. Lydia, John, and my parents didn't suspect a thing, eagerly signing it. But the document was the trap. It contained clauses acknowledging that they knew I was dead and agreed to divide the assets before legal confirmation. If they signed, it would be undeniable proof of their intent to defraud. Every night I sat in the dark room reviewing the videos from the hidden cameras. Images of Lydia and John laughing, discussing money made me want to scream. But I restrained myself, knowing I was getting closer to victory. Rosa sent an additional audio recording, Lydia telling John, "Once this is done, we'll have it all." He trusted me too much, everything was too easy. I listened to it over and over, each word like a knife, but also motivation to continue. I knew I was almost ready. They thought I was dead, but I was alive and I was closer to them than ever. The storm was coming and they wouldn't see it approaching. Each day that passed in the small room above Lucas's coffee shop was a day I sharpened my resolve. The video clips from the hidden cameras, the messages from Carlos, and the documents from Jacob gradually pieced together the full picture of the betrayal. But I still needed one final piece: the truth about Lydia. She wasn't just a betraying wife. She was the center of this conspiracy, and I had to know why. I began digging deeper into Lydia's past, thanks to Carlos, the private investigator with a nose as sharp as a bloodhound. I asked him to investigate everything, from her personal records to her relationships before she met me. "Adam, this will take time," Carlos said over the phone, his voice raspy from cigarettes. "But if she has secrets, I'll find them." I paid extra in cash, not caring about the cost. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it was. While waiting, I continued watching the videos from the hidden cameras in the villa. One night I saw Lydia sitting in the library where she often met John. She was wearing a red silk dress, a glass of wine in hand, talking on the phone in a cold tone. "Yes, everything is going according to plan. Once the trust fund is unlocked, we'll split it evenly." I clenched my fists, my heart pounding. Split evenly with whom? I asked Rosa to place an additional small microphone near Lydia's desk. 2 days later, Rosa sent me a new recording. Lydia's voice came through crystal clear. "John, don't worry. Your parents have agreed. They hired me from the beginning to get close to Adam. He was too trusting, and now we're about to have it all." I listened and wanted to scream. Hired? Lydia was hired by my family to approach me? The love I thought was destiny turned out to be just a preset trap. Carlos called back after a week, his voice heavy. "Adam, I found what you need." He sent me a set of documents through a secret mailbox. I opened them, my hands trembling. The records showed that Lydia Harper wasn't the independent girl from New York as she had claimed. She had worked for a marriage brokerage company specializing in connecting women with wealthy men. Her first contract with my family was signed 3 years before we met. My father paid $50,000 up front for her to seduce and marry me, with a promise to share the assets after I departed. John was the middleman, arranging everything. I read it, my heart feeling like it was being squeezed. Every kiss, every word of love from Lydia, it was all a lie. She never loved me, not ever. I was just prey in their plan. I sat in the dark room, holding my head, tears falling onto the table, not because of the broken love, but because of my own stupidity. How could I have been so blind? Those ambiguous glances between Lydia and John, those whispered calls, all had a purpose. I remembered the lavish wedding, the way Lydia held my hand saying she would be my family. It was all just an act. I wiped my tears, stood up and looked at myself in the mirror. "You won't let them win," I muttered. The pain turned into fiery anger, and I knew I was ready for the next step. With the evidence from Carlos and the recordings from Rosa, I had enough to expose them, but I wanted them to dig their own graves. Jacob reported that Lydia, John, and my parents had signed the fake documents we prepared, the asset division agreement with clauses acknowledging my death. That was the decisive blow, but I wanted them to reveal their true nature before I appeared. I knew they wouldn't wait long. A week later, Lydia hosted a lavish party in my villa. Through the hidden cameras, I saw the villa ablaze with lights, crowded with guests, not to mourn me, but to celebrate. Rosa secretly sent me a video, Lydia in a sparkling sequin dress raising a glass of champagne, smiling radiantly. John stood beside her, his arm around her like a couple. My parents, dressed more elegantly than ever, milled about, shaking hands with guests as if they were the true owners. I heard John speak, his voice gleeful. My brother's empire is now ours. Thank you all for supporting my family during this difficult time. The guests applauded, but I knew they were only there out of curiosity and self-interest. Lydia smiled coldly, leaning into John. We deserve it, don't we? My heart tightened, but I no longer felt pain, only determination. Rosa reported that the party was their official debut as heirs. They invited lawyers, partners, and even the press to announce their control over Blake Investments. I watched the video, seeing them sign another series of papers, all traps set by Jacob. Each signature was a noose tightening around their necks. I knew the time had come. I couldn't let them continue this charade any longer. In that party lay the perfect opportunity. I had prepared for this moment for weeks, meticulously, just as I had built Blake Investments from nothing. I wore a simple black suit, not the lavish style of billionaire Adam Blake, but enough to evoke my former image. My hair was still short and dyed black, my face cleanly shaven so no one would recognize James Carter. Lucas drove me to the familiar alley near the villa, the motorcycle rumbling in the night. Are you sure, Adam? He asked, his voice worried. I nodded, my heart pounding not from fear but from excitement. This is the time, Lucas. They won't see me coming. Rosa had left the back door open and I slipped in quietly, like a ghost returning from the dead. I paused in the hallway, taking a deep breath. Lydia's voice still echoed, recounting the pain of losing Adam in a feigned, choked tone. I pushed the door open and stepped into the light. The atmosphere in the room suddenly fell, deathly silent, as if the whole world had stopped breathing. Lydia dropped her champagne glass, the sound of shattering crystal on the marble floor piercing sharply. Her face turned ashen, her lips trembling, her eyes wide as if seeing a demon. John staggered back a step, his hand shaking so much that he spilled wine on his shirt. My parents stood frozen, mouths agape, faces twisted in horror. The guests whispered, some covering their mouths, others raising their phones to take pictures. I stood there, in the center of the room, smiling coldly. You thought you buried me at the bottom of the sea, I said, my voice low and sharp like a knife. But the sea couldn't swallow me, and now I'm here to bury you. Lydia shook her head, her voice trembling. No, it can't be. You're dead. You're already dead. She lunged toward me as if wanting to touch me to confirm I was real. I raised my hand to stop her, my gaze as cold as ice. John shouted, "Who are you?" "This is a scam." But his voice faltered, his face pale without a trace of color. My father stammered, "Adam, son, how?" My mother covered her face, sobbing, but I knew it was just crocodile tears. I didn't respond, only walking to the large screen at the end of the room, the device Lydia used to project memorial images of me. I plugged in the USB drive Jacob had prepared, and the screen lit up with footage from the hidden cameras. The images appeared clearly. Lydia and John in the library, laughing, discussing how to seize the assets. He trusted me too much. Everything was too easy. Lydia's voice rang out, cold and sharp. Then the scene of John talking to my parents. "Once this is done, we'll have it all." And my father's unmistakable voice. "Just pretend he never existed." The guests in the room gaped, whispers spreading like waves. A reporter shouted, "What is this?" Lydia screamed back, her voice panicked. "Turn it off. Turn it off now." But I stood blocking the screen, not letting anyone touch it. "You want my legacy?" I said, my voice echoing throughout the room. "This is the real legacy, the truth about the betrayers." The atmosphere in the room was thick, as if every eye was boring into Lydia, John, and my parents. I stood in the center, the chandelier light shining on me like the light of justice. I continued, my voice calm but sharp. You didn't just betray me. You hired Lydia to deceive me, planned to kill me, and now you dare to celebrate on my property. I pressed a button on the remote and the screen switched to another series of evidence. The forged contracts Lydia signed, declaring herself the sole heir. John's messages with the criminal underworld group, promising to pay off debts with my brother's assets. And the recording from Rosa, where Lydia admitted, "Your parents hired me from the beginning to get close to Adam. He was too trusting." The guests were stunned, some backing away as if afraid of being implicated. A reporter raised a camera, flashes firing nonstop. Lydia knelt down, tears streaming, her voice trembling. "Adam, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Forgive me, please." She crawled toward me, trying to grab my leg, but I stepped back, my gaze empty. The love I once had for her had died the moment I fell into the sea from her cold look on the deck. "Forgive," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Lydia, you sold our love for a contract. There's no forgiveness for that." She covered her face, sobbing hysterically, but I knew it was just another act. John shouted, his face red with anger and fear. "You have no evidence. It's all fabricated." But his voice wavered and he backed away when he saw my eyes. I smiled faintly, holding up a stack of documents, copies of the fake contracts they had signed, full of legal flaws designed by Jacob. "This is your signature, John, and my parents. You acknowledged my death to seize the assets. That's fraud, and more." My father interjected, his voice shaking. "Adam, we're family. You can't do this to your parents." My mother cried loudly, "Son, we only wanted the best for John." I cut them off, my voice cold as stone. "Family doesn't push each other into the sea. You're not my family anymore." At that moment, the main door burst open. A team of police, tipped off by Jacob in advance, entered, guns at the ready. "Lydia Harper, John Blake, Mr. and Mrs. Blake, you are under arrest for conspiracy to murder, financial fraud, and embezzlement," an officer declared, his voice resounding. Lydia screamed, trying to run to the back door, but was blocked. John struggled, yelling, "You'll regret this, Adam." But two officers had already handcuffed him. My parents clung to each other, sobbing, but no one was moved. They were led out to the police cars, the click of handcuffs mixing with the crowd's murmurs. The living room now held only me and the stunned guests. Reporters surrounded me, thrusting microphones. "Mr. Blake, what will you do next?" I didn't answer, only silently walking out to the balcony, looking at the night sea. There was no joy in victory, only relief. I had freed myself from the chains of a toxic family, from a false marriage. I heard the waves crashing, remembering the night I struggled in the ocean. I had survived not just for revenge, but to reclaim my life. That night, standing on the balcony, I let the cold sea breeze blow across my face. The sea was still pitch black like the night I was pushed down, but now it was no longer frightening. I felt freedom. Not the freedom of a billionaire with villas and yachts, but the freedom of someone who had severed the ties binding their soul. The steady crashing of the waves was like a reminder. I had won, not by stooping to their level, but by standing up stronger than ever. The days that followed, the story about me and my family spread across all newspapers. Billionaire Adam Blake returns from the dead, exposes murder conspiracy. Headlines appeared on every news outlet, from the Miami Herald to CNN. Images of Lydia in handcuffs, John screaming, and my parents bowing their heads in shame were broadcast everywhere. I didn't read much, didn't watch TV, didn't give interviews. I left the villa for Jacob's legal team to handle and moved to a small apartment near the beach. Not luxurious, just enough for me to find peace again. Lucas came to visit, bringing a bottle of beer and a smile. "You did it, Adam. Now live for yourself." I nodded, but my heart was still heavy. I didn't regret exposing them, but I regretted the years I had spent hoping for a family that never existed. The trial took place 3 months later. I didn't attend. I didn't need to see them again. Jacob and my lawyers reported everything via email. Lydia, John, my father and mother were convicted on multiple charges: conspiracy to murder, financial fraud, and embezzlement. Lydia received 7 years in prison, John 10 years, and my parents 5 years each. The forged contracts, messages with the underworld, and recordings from Rosa were irrefutable evidence. The press called it the scandal of the decade, but for me it was just the end of a nightmare. I didn't feel triumphant, only empty. They had once been my family, if only in name, and now they were nothing. I spent time rebuilding my life. Blake Investments was still mine, and I returned to running the company, but with a different mindset. I was no longer the Adam Blake of the early days, diving into making money to prove my worth. I worked out of passion, for the dreams I had when I was that kid sleeping under bridges. I sold some assets, a few yachts, a few plots of land, not because I lacked money, but because I wanted to simplify everything. The beachfront villa in Miami, once a symbol of success, now only reminded me of betrayal. I donated it to a charity to turn it into a community center for young entrepreneurs. I started a charity fund named Second Chance, Second Opportunity. The idea came from my own journey. A poor kid looked down on by his family, but who rose from nothing. The fund supports young people in difficulty, those with no one believing in them, just like me back then. I personally select the projects: scholarships for poor students, startup capital for those with ideas but lacking opportunities. Every time I meet a young person with shining eyes, it's like seeing myself 20 years ago, pedaling in the rain, determined not to give up. I remember Mr. Harlan's words: "Money is a tool, Adam. Use it to live, not to die." Now I use money to bring hope, not to buy love or recognition. I also reconnected with those who helped me in my time of need. I repaid Lucas by investing in his coffee shop, turning it into a small but cozy chain where people can sit and share their own stories. Rosa and Miguel received a large sum from me, enough for them to retire comfortably. "Mr. Blake, we don't need it," Rosa said, her eyes teary. But I insisted, "You are my real family." Jacob stayed at the company, becoming my right-hand man. He laughed. "You really can't be killed, Adam." I just smiled, knowing I had survived not only the sea, but deeper wounds in my heart. My marriage to Lydia officially ended. I didn't see her again, didn't read the letters she sent from prison begging for forgiveness. I no longer hated her. I only pitied her. She had chosen the wrong side and now had to pay. I didn't seek new love, not ready yet. But I began learning to love myself, something I had never done during the years chasing success and recognition. One evening, I stood on the beach near my new apartment, looking out at the ocean. The waves still crashed steadily, but now they no longer reminded me of that horrific night. I thought about my journey, from the abandoned kid to the man who lost everything, then regained it all. I was no longer the Adam Blake of old, craving family love or the glamour of wealth. I was the Adam Blake of now, free, strong, and living for myself. I picked up a pebble on the beach, threw it far, watching it sink into the waves. "This is justice," I muttered. "Justice, freedom, and rebirth." I turned back, walking to the apartment, leaving the night sea behind. My life was now a new page, and this time I would write it my way.